All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to give it a minute to let everyone come on into our Zoom room today for our Teen Science Cafe. Share my screen with you all. And we're going to get started in just a moment. Many of you know the drill. But if you don't, I'm going to start from the very beginning. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Traister. I am the 4-H Teen and Leadership Program Coordinator for UVM Extension. I also organize these Teen Science Cafes every week, and I see some of you have already started to introduce yourselves, so welcome. I see some familiar names. That's great. So if you are new and have never been with us before, please find your chat, open it up, and tell us who you are and where you're from. I see we have Emily from Tunbridge, and Simon and Jack are here from Montpelier. Who else is joining us today? I am also going to enter, if you need our live captioning, I've just entered the link for you to click on so that you can have access to that. Hi, Sam from Orwell, and Manvi is from Missouri. Awesome. We've been getting a nice crew from Missouri, so glad you are with us today. Who else is joining us? I see we keep getting some more attendees, so please go ahead and introduce yourselves. Hi, Maddie from East Montpelier. Who else is with us today? Brianna is from Barrie, Vermont. Awesome. I'm in Hyde Park, Vermont today. And I will let our presenter introduce herself, tell you where she's from when we get to her. So it's gonna be a secret for right now. Hi, Haley from Maine. All right, so keep introducing yourselves. I'm gonna go to our protocols. All of you are muted today. You will have the ability to speak using the chat box and our Q&A box. The only people that you're going to see today are myself and our presenter. All of you don't show up on video, and again, you're not able to speak, but I know you all are good with the chat box from all of the previous Teen Science Cafes that we've done. So we use those two features a little bit differently. We use our chat box to answer any questions that the presenter might have for you. If you have any thoughts about today's topic that you want to share with others, but we don't use it for general chit chat. The Q&A box is questions you have specifically for our presenter. So we put them in the Q&A box so that they're there for when the presenter is able to get to your questions. Now, we do answer every question that comes in, but we might not answer it at the time you wrote it. So try to be specific in your question so we know what you're talking about, because it might be 10 slides later before your question gets asked. You also will notice when you go into the Q&A box, if you like someone's question, you'll see a thumbs up. You can upvote. You can click that thumbs up and that moves the question up the rankings. But again, we're going to answer every question, so it doesn't necessarily matter the order that the questions come in, because we will get to all of them. So we just ask today that you are kind and courteous to one another. Don't create any distractions. Keep introducing yourselves into the chat box. I see we have a lot of new people who just joined us. David from St. Louis and Nate from South Burlington. Miranda's here from Fairfax, Vermont, and a few others. So welcome, everyone. We're going to ask that you stay engaged, participate fully today. I know all of you are usually great at that, and it just makes it more interesting the more that you participate. So I want to just let you know about some other opportunities. I've spoken about some of these in the past. The one I really want to focus on today is the Learn to Code, the 4-H World Changers program. That starts next week. And the reason I'm really wanting to highlight it is because one of the faculty, one of the presenters that's teaching in that program, I'm going to be there, but I'm not a coder. I'm just going to be hanging out, helping to move things along. But our presenter, today's presenter, Lisa Dion, I always forget, Dion or Dion? You say it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to say Dion. Lisa is going to be one of the instructors in that course, as well as one of my colleagues from Ohio 4-H. So we're doing it as a coding program, and it's open to anyone, but we're really trying to get a bunch of teens from Ohio as well as Vermont and anywhere in between or beyond. It's really open to anyone in grades 6 through 12, and it's Thursday nights, 6 sessions on Thursday night. But the cool thing is, if for some reason the time doesn't work for you, everything's going to be recorded, and you actually could participate and just not be at the live session. So if that's something you want to learn, go ahead and participate, because you can do it either in the live sessions or through the recordings. And I think it's going to be pretty fun. So you can see the other opportunities here. We have a speak up contest. We have a youth environmental summit. We have an opportunity, if you're interested in the environment, also to become a teen teacher. You can learn more about all these opportunities at the website that is posted here. I also want to let you know that our friends at the Vermont Brain Bee are doing a weekly brain club to learn about neuroscience, to get people ready for the Vermont Brain Bee. But you can participate even if you're not interested in doing the Vermont Brain Bee. It's really good sessions to learn about the brain and neuroscience. So check out how to participate in that at the vermontbrainbee.com. And then there are some other teen science cafes that may interest you, depending on what your time is. My friends at the Lake Champlain Sea Grant program, which is right here in Vermont, are doing several sessions focusing on the Lake Champlain and watershed science. And then our friends in Maine are also doing a teen science series. So I'll post the links in the chat box as soon as I can. And if you're interested in those programs, you can just go ahead and register. So I want to move on to today's presentation. Our Science Cafe is on computer science immersion. And our presenter is Lisa Dion. Lisa has been teaching in the computer science department at UVM for the past 4 years. She is a member of the team that has developed UVM's computer science education program. She has also written a textbook with a colleague in UVM's education department that is aimed to show middle and high school teachers how and why to include computational thinking in their classes. So I want us all to welcome Lisa, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Yes, so my name is Lisa, and I am currently in my office at UVM right now. So I'm in Burlington, Vermont. Great to see all of you. Happy to have you here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Make sure that this works. All right. Okay, I do have the chat window open, so I will be able to see your comments throughout this talk. Okay, so let me first introduce myself and tell you a little bit more about me. I grew up in a small town in Rhode Island, so I've been a lifelong New Englander. And so when it came time, you know, I was going through school and I really didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I had friends who, you know, were very strong-willed, and they knew exactly what they wanted to do from when they were 6 years old, and that was just not me. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, what I was really interested in, and so I sort of went to college with, you know, sort of shooting darts a little bit. And so I started at Providence College, also in Rhode Island, as a marketing major, and that's how I applied to colleges. For context, my K through 12 public schooling did not have any business courses, so I had no idea what marketing really entailed going in. Again, I was just shooting darts at this point. And so turns out I do not like marketing. It turns out it's just not for me. And so I realized that very quickly, and I ended up switching to a math major within the first 3 weeks of college. So, you know, sometimes you just figure out your path along the way by trying things out and seeing what you like and what you don't, and that's perfectly fine. And there's nothing against marketing. I have some friends who were marketing majors and they were fantastic. It was just not for me. So then I was a math major and still not quite sure what I wanted to do with that, what I wanted to do with my life with that. So as part of that math major, I had to take a computer science course. And so I took my first computer science class as a sophomore in college, and I ended up loving it. I think within the first 3 weeks of that class, I declared it as my second major. And so luckily there was enough overlap between the math and computer science majors that I was able to complete both within the 4 years of college. And so at the end of that, I chose to go to graduate school. And so I went to the University of Michigan. So I did go out Midwest for a few years there. And I got my master's degree from there. And as a grad student, I was assigned a GTA position, which is a graduate teaching assistant position for their intro programming course. And that was so much fun, being able to, really delve deep into teaching other people how to do something, and especially the intro course where you're introducing someone to coding for the first time, and it can be very overwhelming, and it seems scary at first, like it's like learning a new language. But then seeing students build confidence as the semester goes on and realizing that, oh my gosh, they can do that too, was just so rewarding, and I loved it. So I decided, you know what? I want to teach. I finally found my path. I know what I want to do with my life. Took me a bit, but I got there. And so now I teach full time at UVM, have been, this is my 5th year, and I am loving it. So I do have a full teaching load, which means I teach 4 classes, and I do not have research as part of my workload. So this talk is not going to be about any research projects. And so this is instead going to be about computer science and education and how those work together and sort of my experience with those. All right, I'm gonna pause here. Are there any questions in the Q&A yet?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. All right, then I shall continue. Feel free to reach out with any questions throughout. I love being interrupted, so go ahead and do that as much as you want. So I have the first poll question, which Lauren will put in the chat.
Nope, I just launched it.
Popping right up,
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It just pops right up. So if you guys see the poll, answer it. If not, you can put your answer in the chat box, but you're being asked, what is your experience with computer science? You've never heard of it, you've heard of it but don't have experience, you taught yourself some, you've done some extracurricular activities, or you've actually taken a computer science class. So let's see, we got 11 of you. Let's see if we can get a couple more of you to answer. All right, I see one came into the chat. Give it about another 10 seconds. But it looks like most people have heard of it, but just don't have any experience. And 25% have taught themselves a little bit. Nice.
Awesome.
We'll close that out.
All right. So thank you all for that feedback. So it's very common now that computer science has slowly, and depending on what state you're in, or geographic location, or even school system, it has varying levels of presence within education. And so some places don't have any computer science in the curriculum at all. When I was going through my public school, it didn't have any offerings for computer science at all. And then others have a computer science class offered only in the high school. Others have like your hour of code or other extracurricular activity that you're introducing throughout the K-12 curriculum. And so by now it looks like most of you have at least heard of it. And so it's starting to make its way in there in one form or another. So I'm going to launch straight into a second question, which doesn't seem like it's related, but you'll understand why in just a minute. So here is a second poll.
I am launching your second poll, which wants you to say whether you had heard of these, you've heard of them but no experience, you have experience with some of these, or you have experience with all of these. And what these are: Google Docs, Microsoft Word, Apple Pages, Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, Apple Numbers, and Google Slides, and Microsoft PowerPoint, and Apple Keynote. Wow, I only know a few of those.
Yeah, you have sort of your like text document stuff in the first three options, then you get your like spreadsheets in your second three options, and then you get your like presentation slides in your third kind of options.
I was laughing when you were talking through the last one about, computer science in school. And I'm laughing because we had typing classes when I was in school.
Oh yeah, in
there were
sixth grade,
there
I
were
was
no
taught where to
computers.
put your fingers on the keyboard in like sixth grade. Yes, I also had
No,
that.
I mean typing with a typewriter.
With a typewriter?
With a typewriter.
Is kind of jealous of you because I wish I had a typewriter.
I just aged myself. Well, it looks like 83% of you have experience with some of these, and 8% actually have experience with all of these. That's impressive. That is impressive.
All right, so
All
thank you
right.
for that feedback as well.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So the reason I asked that question, and most of you, no one has never heard of any of these, so you all have at least heard of them, and most of you have some level of experience with it. And I bring it up because the very first computer science courses, I think this was in the 1980s, they were taught by business teachers, and what they taught was the Microsoft suite. So Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft PowerPoint, which has since grown into Google's versions of things and Apple's versions, and lots of competing sort of ideas of that same type of program. And so these are things that now are sort of immersed throughout the curriculum, where you probably have had to write an essay before, and what do you write an essay in? Well, on Microsoft Word or Google Sheets or Google Docs, right? And you probably had a class before where maybe you've had to present something. And so what do you present in? Well, you got to make some slides. And so you're using these throughout, all of your classes, and it can apply to really any subject area. And that is where the connection comes, because that is exactly where I expect computer programming is going to go. So that's how I expect it. I can imagine something, like 20 years from now, it's going to be so immersed in education that you're going to be like, oh yeah, I've had to write a script to run a program that does that. Sure, of course, I went to elementary school, and just sort of that offhand, like it's just going to be second nature because it's going to be so immersed within school. So that is where I hope and expect that computer program is going to go. And so I've made it one of my missions to help edge it along that way, because I do think it's important to, especially in today's age when technology is such a big part of our lives, to at least understand how it works and to sort of think logically like a computer does in order to, as sort of a fundamental piece of your education. So I'd love to see that happen. Okay, so as was mentioned in the lovely intro that Lauren gave, I have co-written a book. I just found out yesterday that we're getting the ball rolling on it again. So it is in the hands of the publishers, and they are going and making it look beautiful and adding lots of formatting and all of the wonderful stuff. And it looks like it's going to be published next year in the fall. So I'm very excited. It has a timeline. Even with COVID, the timeline might have been pushed out a year, but at least it has a timeline, right? And so this textbook I co-wrote with a colleague from UVM's education department. Her name is Maureen Newman. She's fantastic. And so you're getting a sneak peek essentially at today's talk about what this book is really about. The book is intended for teachers, so I am fully aware of that, and I am going to give you a sneak peek into some of the different sort of example problems and things that we give. That way you'll be able to get practice with sort of what this might look like in your different classes. So each chapter of the book takes a different subject area and gives reasons why it's important to bring computer science into that class, and then gives different examples of practice problems and programs and things that would fit within that subject area. So we have a chapter for art, a chapter for English, a chapter for physics, a chapter for history, and more. So that's the general idea of what the book is about. And so today what I'm going to do in this talk is go over a few examples of this. So I'm going to take those first three, art, English, and physics, and we'll go through an example of something that would fit in each of those subject areas that uses computer science or computational thinking in order to solve. All right. Any questions yet? Okay, then I'll keep going. So our first example will be in art. And so here is a couple pictures that are examples of art from Wassily Kandinsky. And he was in the op artist movement back in the early to mid 1900s. And so here are a couple examples of some of his most famous art pieces. And so I'd like you to write in the chat box sort of what you notice about his art style. How would you describe it? What do you think?
So there's
What kind
always
of
a
art is this?
delay while people are typing, but hopefully you guys, there we go. Jack says there are a lot of circles, same with Haley. Manvi says very based on circles and rings. And Nate says abstract.
Yeah.
Others had said lots of circles.
Good, yes. Yeah, circles are a definite theme here for sure.
Tristan says lots of colors. And
yes.
Oliver says concentric circles. We're still getting the circles. Do we notice anything besides the colors and the circles?
Yeah, someone had said concentric circles, so good noticing that they're one inside of another in that first picture, for sure. Yeah, that's sort of a major theme here for sure. And so then the next question is, imagine that you get to see these pictures, but your friend does not, and you're trying to describe to this friend how to draw something in this style. What would you say to that friend? How would you describe this? You know, your friend is standing there with an easel in front of them, and you know, you got paint cans, paintbrush, and they're just waiting on your instructions. And you want to produce something that looks like this style of art. What would you say?
And while they're typing, Samuel had said for the first question that was a little different. He noticed the contrasting colors.
Yes. Good observation.
So Jack says multicolored circles inside more multicolored circles. Leah says interlap your shapes, use a variety of colors, create a common theme. And Maddie says multiple colorful circles. Oliver says draw a small circle and then pick a different color and make a bigger one, and so on. Good directions, Oliver. Manvi says, I would try to explain it like the rings of a tree, but with different colors. Ooh, I like how you associated with something that someone might have a reference for that. And Miranda says, draw a bunch of circles in whatever color you want. Greg says, right example looks random with decreasing size range. That's right, there are two different pictures here.
Right. Yes, you might give different directions for each one.
Yeah, and then Oliver adds with contrasting backgrounds.
Yeah, so these are all fantastic and very creative. So thank you for this. All right, so what I am going to do next is I am going to get out of my slide presentation, and we're going to pretend that we're giving directions to a friend, but that friend is a computer. And so we're going to be telling the computer how to make the art. So I'm going to go to a website which allows us to draw some things. So I am going to, let's get out of the slideshow and into this. Okay, so hopefully you all can see this website that has Codesters up at the top here. And so this is a animation platform essentially. And so I have in this black box, I have some code that's written. And before I even get into that, I am going to press this play button, which is going to make the program appear in this right pane. And so if I press play, what it does is it draws a bunch of random circles of random sizes and colors. And the most fun part about this is that the computer is choosing what color, what size, and what location to place each circle, which means if I run it again, it's going to place them in different locations and different colors and different sizes. And so the computer is actually creating the art. And so every time you run it, it's going to look different and it's going to be different. But we can tweak the parameters and what we want it to look like. So here is an example of a computer program that sort of mimics the style of art that Wassily Kandinsky had. So as a few examples of what's happening in here, let me go through the code briefly, is that first we need the computer to choose a random location and size and color. And so we have to import what's a random library in order to get that access to allow the computer to choose a random number. Next, we have this line that starts with 4. And this is a line that is the beginning of a loop. And so this says that this is going to repeat 100 times. And so everything that you can see here that is indented inside of the loop, that's the part that's going to be repeated 100 times, which means that if I change this number, if I change it to 10, then when I run it, only 10 circles appear. And if I make it bigger instead, if I change it to be 200 instead of 100, now 200 circles appear. And so that's one way where I can go and tweak the parameters to make the art look different, right? And so inside this loop where all of these things are being repeated, this is where it chooses the random color. And then I'm going to focus on this last part here, this codesters.circle. This is the part that actually draws the circle. And so it takes in the location, the size, and the color. And you'll notice that almost all of these have that random.randint involved. And so that's showing you that, yeah, this is allowing the computer to choose a random number between this range, right? So any number, pick a number between -250 and +250. And let's go ahead and place it there. Pick another number between -250 and +250. And then we're going to put it at that place on the scale. And so that's why every time you run it, it's choosing new random numbers and is able to then produce a different style there. So that one sort of mimics the one that was on the right in the presentation. And I have a separate one that mimics the idea of the concentric circles. So for this one, I made them into squares instead, because with circles, we had the background showing through because the circles weren't quite, completely up against each other. So I'm going to run this one first to show you what it looks like. And so this produces a bunch of concentric squares that just fill up the whole pane, and each square is drawn in a different color. And so this, like the other one, every time you run it, it'll produce different colors, even though all of the placement of the squares are all going to be the same this time. It's going to choose a different color for each one. And so you'll be able to run this, and the computer is creating the art, which is fun. So that is Wassily Kandinsky and sort of the programs that create his style of art. Are there any questions on this one? I know that I haven't exactly explained the random colors yet, but I'm waiting until the next artist to do that.
Yeah, at this point, we don't have anything in the Q&A box, so keep
All right.
going. This is
In that
awesome.
case, I will continue. All right, so I'm going to slide back to the presentation. And I have a couple more artists to look at because this is just a lot of fun to be able to mimic people's art using coding programs. So I'm just running with it. All right, so our next one, the artist is Edna Andrade. And I'm going to ask you pretty much the same questions that I did about Kandinsky, which is here are a couple of pictures representing her art. And what do you notice about it? How is this, how would you describe this style of art? So I'll give you a second to type into that chat.
So Oliver says lots of small lines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Haley says it's like an illusion. That's what I was thinking. Monby agrees, very illusion based, trips the eyes up, hypnotizing, swirls, kind of hypnotic, very jagged, optical illusion.
Yeah, for sure. And that's great that you're noticing all of these things.
Sam says difficult but fascinating to look at. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so even though this is another op artist, it's a very different style of art. And so the optical illusions that some of you have pointed out are also came from this movement. So all of those books of like, the books that have all the optical illusions in it that look similar to this, that came from these types of artists who were the sort of first ones to do that. Yeah, in the chat I see really hard to draw or paint. Yeah, for sure. Because she had a real talent for making you see circles when there aren't actually any circles drawn, right? You all can see circles in here, but when you look, there's no actual lines that draw a circle. It's instead all of these sort of stripes that are going on that she chose to twist in this way or that way, which makes you see circles in that pattern. And then the optical illusion part is that now all of a sudden, if you stare at it long enough, it almost looks like it's twisting and moving, right? That's another she was very talented at making you see things that aren't there, right? Let's all appreciate Edna for a second.
Definitely.
Okay. So this is another one that's, all right, so let's think about now that we've identified some aspects of this art, well, how would you give someone instructions to be able to draw this? We already have like a really hard to draw or paint, but without being able to actually draw the circles, how do you describe to someone, what steps would you say to make them be able to draw this? This style of art. So I'm going to let you think about that and type that into the chat as well.
So Oliver says drawing lines that make circle without drawing the actual circle.
Yeah, a little bit harder to describe this time, isn't it?
Yeah. Think about if you were trying to do this on a piece of paper, what are the steps you would have to take? And then think about how you would then verbalize that. Yeah, Jack says I would spin my pencil. This is a tough one, right?
This is a tough one.
Manvi says illusional art. Think of swirls starting from the middle to outward. So think about those guys. Are these straight lines, and then are they then going completely straight? Like, do they zigzag? Mm-hmm. So Greg says, Leah says start in the middle. Oh, I'm losing this. Now they're coming in. Start in the middle and draw lines in a spiral swirl shape. Greg says repeat pattern vectors changing to directions. I like the word vectors. Haley says if I was to describe this to a friend, she would look at me like I'm crazy. Yeah, maybe. Draw lines to make a circle, but don't make a circle. You guys are funny. Oliver says zigzag lines to make a circle.
Yeah, so you're all hitting on some good topics here. The first is a lot of repetition, right? Where if you're considering each of these lines separately, well, there's a lot of repetition within these stripes, right? And so computers are really good at repeating things. They love to repeat, so that's going to be nice. And then the other thing is the idea of changing directions or having zigzag lines, or, you know, this idea of like you're going in one direction, but then you have to stop and change and go in a different direction, right? And so, yes, all of those are going to come into play when we have the computer do it too.
So Miranda just added, I like how you got a little bit more specific. Draw a spiral with the lines getting fatter the further they get from the center, then make them zigzag at the same point to make it look like a circle.
Right, good. So
Nice.
all of these lines coming out from the center and then stopping after the same distance, that way they can all shift at the same time, and that's what makes that circle sort of appear to our eyes, right? Good, you're all making excellent observations. So for this one, I'm going to switch back into coasters. I'm going to be going back and forth a little bit here, so bear with me. So let's go ahead and exit out of this presentation so that I can go into here. All right, so I have a separate project for this one. And what this one is doing is I'm going to talk through it as it plays. And it starts in the middle and it draws a zigzag. And then it resets to the middle, turns just a little bit, and then draws the same zigzag. And then it repeats that, I think 24 times here. And so I'm going to let it play out. And so it's drawing all of these little zigzag lines that are, it's repeating, you know, the same distance for each one, and just shifting its starting position each time from the center. You know, I'm facing in this direction, and then I'm facing slightly more to the right. And so it just turns a little bit more each time it repeats this action. And so the other nice part of coasters is that for this one, you can actually watch it go through each step individually. You know, it's drawing, it's turning, it's drawing, it's turning. And so it's making each of these zigzags. And so as it finishes up here, now all of a sudden you look at it and you can kind of see the circles inside of it, can't you? Even though it didn't draw any circles, it only drew straight lines. And so this is sort of mimicking Edna Andrade's style of art. And so this one, if you glance at the code here, it's a little bit more involved. And it does have a lot of those random.randint lines throughout here, which means that if I run it again, it's going to choose slightly different distances and angles for that zigzag line, which is going to change how the overall program looks. And so I'm going to let that play out, but I'm going to point over here in the text to a few things that we can sort of modify as we're playing around with this. One is the thickness of the line. We set it to be a thickness of 4. So you can imagine that a larger number would make it thicker and a smaller number would make it thinner. And so one of you had mentioned that, you know, you get thicker as you move out. And so this is the command that you would use to be able to make that happen. And so you could make the pen width larger as you went out, or make it just larger in general. And so as it finishes up here, all of a sudden, once that last one goes in, you can just see those circles again, right? And so this one makes it look a little bit different. And then the other thing we can play around with is the number of lines, where I have it set to 24 right now, but we can play around with that. So if I move it down to just 4 lines, now it's still going to choose a random zigzag, but now it's going to move. It's going to change direction even more each time. That way it only draws 4 lines to complete the circle. And so that one, it's kind of hard to see the circle now, right? Because it had to twist so much in between them. You can't really connect where these zigzag lines, where those like elbows connect, right? And so you might want to have something a little bit bigger. You can have, let's see, if I bring it up to 36, I might not have the patience to let this run through, but there are going to be a lot of lines this time. And so this one, you'll definitely get to see the circle even more clearly, right? The circle is almost connected here in this first elbow. And so this is, again, letting the computer sort of choose these different things while you set certain parameters to make it look like that type of art. And then this one is also the first one that instead of just drawing shapes like circles and squares, it's now using a pen to go in and draw this movement. And so you'll notice a bunch of these pen different commands, like the pen width is the thickness of the line, pen up means stop drawing, and then pen down means, okay, now it's time to draw. And so every time you move, you turn right and you move, then that's where the actual drawing happens. And so this one also uses a line that looks very similar to before, and this is the one where everything that's indented in here is going to be repeated, and so that's where you get the repetition for each of these lines coming in. Because it repeats for the number of lines times, which we just changed to 36, and that was that number that we were playing around with. So there it goes. I did have the patience, it finished, and can you see those circles? That's even more, you know, visible there.
There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 circles this time.
Mm-hmm.
Make out.
Yeah, for sure. Right, because there's definitely this one here, and then you can make out that one pretty clearly, and then this one is a little bit harder to see out on the edge there before the lines end. Yeah, so that's sort of using coding to again, computers are very good at repeating tasks over and over again. They love to repeat things. And so having that one zigzag line that you repeat over and over again at a slightly different starting angle each time is going to be our approach to making that type of art. Pretty cool? I think it's pretty cool. All right, you ready for one more style of art? All right, going back into the slides. Feel free to interrupt me with questions whenever.
We do have a question that just popped up. For the optical illusion, can you make the lines multicolored?
Ooh, can we make the lines multicolored? Absolutely. So let me get back out of here. Yeah, so you'll notice that it sets the background color to blue because the pen, I believe, defaults to black. And so to have that sort of contrast, to have it show up, that's what we did here. We can, I believe, let me play around in here for just a sec. Sprites, is that what I want? Where do we get to see the pen stuff? It might be events. Oh, maybe not. Actions, perhaps? We get to glide, we get to move. Here we go. Okay. So looks like this is where you have all the different sort of commands that you can play around with on Codesters. So it has one specific for drawing. So we can set the color of the line that the shape draws. Yes. Okay, so that's what we want to do. This has a drag and drop feature, which is a lot of fun. So what we could do is set the color to, right now it's black. We can set it to green. And then the other thing that we can do is have it, let me see. So let me start to run it with that to make sure that it did change the black to green. Cool. I wasn't lying. That is what it did. Perfect. And so if I want to change that, let's say for each line in the segment, then that means I would have to, let's see. So I have different angles here and distances, and that's determining the zigzag line. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4 different line segments within that zigzag. And so for each one, it has an angle that it has to turn, and it has a distance that it moves forward before making the next turn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some colors to this. So I'm going to add another one of these lists, and instead of having it choose a random one, which we will see in a different program, I'm going to choose random ones for it. So let's go ahead and do green, red, What else will show up well on blue? Yellow. And
about orange.
orange. Let's do it. Okay, and so then when this is the part of the code where it turns right at the angle and moves forward for the distance, this is where I'm also going to add the set color, the same command that we did up here with the green. And I'm gonna set it to colors at the index. So this will similarly go through each of these 4 different colors for the 4 different segments. So let's see if that works. So it should draw green for the center circle, and then red outside of that, and then yellow, and then orange for the outside one. So let's see if it, here we go. Green, red, yellow, orange. Green, red, yellow, orange. Okay, let me make the number of lines a little bit smaller. That way we get to see what it looks like at the end. I'm gonna see how well 12 looks.
And while that's playing out, Manvi is asking, is this a certain code or is it someone that can only be run by the website?
So this is the Codester's website allows this type of animation that it has built into it. So this is specific to this website, yes. So you would need an account through this Codester's website in order to be able to code this. Mm-hmm.
Is it a free website?
It used to be. However, during the writing of the textbook, when we were putting all these into the book, I don't think it's free anymore. So that one, I think they have different packages for like classrooms versus personal versus, an individual thing. So you would have to look, it is codesters.com. So you would have to look to see what it might cost for you to use it. But here you get to see the different colors in action. That does look kind of fun, right? I like it. Any other suggestions, things you want me to play around with? Or you want to move on to another one?
You guys can give your preference in the chat. Play around with this or move on to the next one. All right, move on.
All right, moving on. All right, so I have one more artist that we're going to discuss before we move on to a different subject area. And so this is for Edna Andrade. And so he was also an artist in the op art movement. And he has a bunch of art that are all very similar to this with different color choices for each one. And so he had the same 4 boxes, but he was playing around with the different colors. And so this one, where Kandinsky had all of the circles, it's going to be Albers that has all of these squares going on. So you'll notice that there is definitely, like, what do you notice about the color choices in here between these 2 side-by-side drawings? How do you think he chose those colors?
Haley says it reminds her of fall.
Yes. Yeah, with the oranges and the black. Mm-hmm. Kind of seems almost Halloween-y, doesn't it?
Yeah, Leah says the different colors makes the art look different even though it's the same drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Manvi says the first one has a lot of contrast.
Yes, good. Whereas the second one, the colors are a little bit more of a spectrum, right? They're a little more connected.
Jack says it looks like a tunnel. And that's what I was thinking. One makes it look like it's going in and the other makes it look like it's going out.
Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Maddie says it also looks like fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're on the right especially. Those are the colors of the leaves outside, aren't they?
Well, the other one looks like a candy corn.
It totally does. You're right. This is the perfect time of year for this presentation. All right, awesome. So all very good observations again. And so for this one, I'm going to switch back into Codesters so that we can see how to draw this using a computer. All right. Okay, so for this one, here's another one where I'm going to run it a few times before I explain how this works. And you'll notice this one, instead of having 4 boxes, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. But it is sort of the similar layout to what Albers had done, where each one is centered inside the other one, but the center is a little bit lower. And it does sort of have this color sort of spectrum going on, right? They're not completely random colors this time. They are connected and sort of more intentional in this one compared to some of the other artists where it seemed like completely random color choices, right? So if I run this a few times, you'll notice that sometimes there is more contrast, like in this case. It goes straight from that green to purple, moving from that outer box to the next one. And so you'll get to see that sometimes, where you'll have that sharp contrast happening. Whereas other times you'll get more of a gradient. And 1 out of 27 times, you will get a solid square of one color. But in general, you can see that these colors, they're not completely random. They're going to be chosen. And so the coloring is really the important part of this style. And so you'll notice that there is, again, a lot of randomness involved here, which is why it's different every time I run it. So you get a lot of these random.randint. And then what's happening here, in order to understand it, you have to understand how computers interpret colors. And so you're ready to learn about colors in a new way? Here's a question for you. What are the 3 primary colors?
What do you guys think? Put it in the chat.
Who knows their colors really well?
So Manvi says red, yellow, and blue. Haley agrees. Emily saying magenta, yellow, indigo. And Jack is saying blue, green, red. So we do not have agreement.
Okay, so you're probably taught with the red, blue, yellow in like elementary school, right? Those are your 3 primary colors, and then you have your secondary colors being the mixtures of those, right? And so I like that Emily and Jack, you have these different answers because you're leading towards more of what computers have. And so Emily, you have magenta, yellow, and indigo, which if you're familiar with printers, if you've ever had to print something out, the printer ink comes in 3 colors, and it's magenta, yellow, and cyan, which is similar to indigo. It's like a bluish color. And so yes, you're leading closer, right? Printers are they have to communicate with computers to know what to print. And so that's getting closer. And then Jack, you are hitting, oh, okay. Simon.
We got 2 people on the same. So thank you, Simon, for letting us know that Jack hasn't typed anything. I love how you
all right,
called him out.
Simon is owning the keyboard right
awesome.
Now. And so the cyan, yellow, and magenta is what printers use. And then Jack, you have blue, green, and red. And yes, actually, that is how computers are going to represent colors. And the reason for that is that computers work by shining light, which is different from having like paint colors and things. And so yeah, red, green, and blue for computers. Yep, you're noticing these. So you might have heard those 3 colors before together, or heard the term RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue. And so if you've heard RGB before, I don't know if that's a term that you are familiar.
I think everyone's heard RBG for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So just gotta flip it.
Very, very close and very similar initials, very different Yes, interpretation there, but good point, because RBG is one that you've probably heard of, especially recently. But yes, red, green, and blue is what we're looking at here. Because computers like to shine light, and so what happens is when you shine all three parts of the red, green, and blue together, that's going to give you all of the combinations of lights, and so that will show up being very bright white. Whereas when all of the three parts are shut off, that means you're not shining any red, green, or blue, then that's when it's really dark, and that's when it's going to show up black. And so computers really only understand zeros and ones. If you've ever heard of that before, computers love zeros and ones. And so what we're going to be working with is computers like to interpret things as zeros and ones, or in general, anything that can be interpreted as having like two choices, right? You have a 0 or a 1. You only have those two options. You don't have any third option or more. And so anything that is 2 or a power of 2 is going to be a good way to communicate with a computer. And so to sort of meet you halfway, what they did was they came up with a system of representing a color where a computer can interpret it because it can translate it easily into zeros and ones. And then it's also a little bit more readable for us than just zeros and ones. It's not directly readable, but let's take a look at what's going to happen here. So what's happening is we will have 6 digits going on here. Hold on, let me move this chat window out of the way of my text editor. So we're going to have these 6 colors. So what I'm going to do is I am going to comment out the line that actually draws the squares. That way we won't see them, but I'm going to play around with setting the background color. And so this uses a code that's called a hexadecimal code, in case you've ever heard that term before. It's fine if you haven't. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 6 zeros. And so this is saying give it no red, no green, no blue, so it shows up black because we're not giving it any color. Whereas if I change these first 2 numbers, so it's going to be the first 2 are red, the middle 2 are green, the last 2 are blue. And so if I change that to be a really high number, let's say 9s to start off with, then it's going to turn into a reddish color. And if I instead change the middle 2 to be 9s, then this should turn into a greenish color. And then if I instead put those back to 0 and change the last 2 to be 9s, then this is going to turn into a bluish color because we're only giving it blue values. And so using these these 6 numbers, we're going to be able to represent any combinations of colors. And so the way that printers work is that it actually uses sort of the secondary colors from here. So if I turn on both the red and the blue, you would think that would make purple, and it does, right? And then if I turn in the, what do I want? Red, green, and blue. So green and blue, let's see what that makes. That's, you know, your like aqua turquoise, your combination of green and blue, right? And so this is how we're going to be able to have these combinations to make all these different color choices. But you ready for another twist? It doesn't just go from 0 to 9 for each of these digits. We're actually we don't want to have just 10 options for each of these numbers. We don't want to have just 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. That's 10 options. We want to have 16 options because computers love powers of 2. And so 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. And so we want to add 6 more options here. So we're going to start using letters instead. So if I set everything back to 0 for a second, that's 6 of them, right? So we got black again. If I change the first 2, not to 9, but to, let's see, A, B, C, D, E, F, if I want to add 6 letters, then F is going to be the last one there. So if I change those to F, this is an even brighter red than it was before. So let me change them back to 9s to show you the difference. So that one's a little darker. So to have the brightest color, we're going to want to use Fs. And so what do you think is going to happen if I change all of these to F? I have 6 Fs going on. So that's changing the red to be completely on, going 100%, changing the green to be going on 100%, changing the blue on to be going on 100%. When you combine all the colors, what do you get?
Oh, a couple are saying white, Oliver says brown, but white seems to be leading from majority of
Yeah.
folks. Jack
Yeah,
also,
so
Jack, I'm sorry, Simon says brown.
Yep. Good. So the combination of whites and browns here. And so remember that we are combining light options. And so whenever we add more colors to our light, it's gonna become lighter. And so yes, white is in fact what it looks for. So unlike your painting colors, where the more colors that you add together, the more brownish it looks, when you add lights together, it's going to become closer to white. And so this is how we're going to allow the computer to choose random colors, because we give it all of the options right here. We give it from 0 to 9 plus A to F, which is all 16 possible options there. And then that's what we're going to use to choose each of our 6 different sort of digits here in our color. And then to make the colors interrelated, what we're doing is repeating each of the red, green, and blue parts. So if we have, for example, 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, now we're repeating each of the red parts, each of the green parts, and each of the blue parts. And so that's going to be very dark. Yeah, almost black. Whereas if I do it a little bit more, let me see. If I do like a 4, 4, what do I want to do? 0, 0, let's do DD. I'm just repeating. I'm choosing random digits and repeating them twice. So this will have no green. It'll have a little bit of red, and it'll have a lot of blue. So my guess is some kind of bluish purple. Okay, so it's sort of like a darker blue, right? And so this is how we're going to build this particular program, where we are repeating digits for each of the red, green, and blue parts. And then then we have this part where we're like, oh, okay, well, once we have one of those, now I want the next color to be sort of related to it, right? These colors are sort of on a spectrum. They're not they're not completely random. We want them to be related to one another. And so from that 4400DD, if I start changing this green part to start adding a little bit of green in it, so I'm changing the 2 zeros to 1s. And then I'm going to change the 1s to 2s. And I'm just going to keep changing it to see how it changes the color as we go on, as we're injecting a little bit more green into it each time. Let's see if we can notice any differences. It does seem to be getting a little bit lighter to me. The blue does seem lighter, and then once we get up, the green is going to start to take over. So the blue is becoming lighter, and let's see it shift towards green. All right, after 9 is going to come A. So I'm starting to go into the alphabet now. You can see it becoming a little bit more green. A little bit more of that combination of blue and green, right? That like turquoise or aqua that we're getting here. And here's the first time that we're going to see more green than blue. And then if I max out the green, then that's going to be sort of our spectrum. So we just went in tiny steps from, well, we ended up here. but we started from here, right? And so that's how we went in sort of a spectrum to get from one color to the other. And so that is what this program is doing, is it's deciding, okay, well, am I going to move one digit down each time? So am I going to get a little bit darker each time? Or am I going to move one digit up each time? So am I going to get a little bit lighter each time? And then it also has the option to have no change, which is the 0 option. And when all 3 parts are set to 0, that's when you get that single color that happened once. So let me go ahead and let me comment this one again and give you the actual program that prints the squares. And so let me find another one. Yeah, so you'll notice that this, you can sort of see that same spectrum going on, where we're starting from the outside with this lighter blue, and then the blue value must be getting darker as we go along, because as you can see, as it gets to those smaller boxes inside, it does get darker on that sort of gradient level. And so that is how these colors are represented, and that's how the computer is able to sort of process them and show them to you on the screen. And so that's how we're allowing the computer to choose this color and the direction that it's going to change the gradient throughout. So when it does have the contrast, let me find one with a big contrast. Like this one in the middle, right? The smallest box, that doesn't look like part of the gradient, does it? That should be like the super lightest orangey color that you would expect, right? But what's happening is it's actually going off the end of the spectrum. And so it became so light that it looped back around to the darkest color. And so since that happened, that's where you get that sharper contrast of like, oh my goodness, now I'm going straight from one side to a completely different one. So instead of being a very light orange, now all of a sudden I'm going to be a very dark green, because it's shifting from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other end. And so that's where you get that contrast happening. All right, are there any questions or any tweaks you want me to make in this program? What are y'all thinking? I'm going to run it a few more times because this produces some beautiful stuff. That's pretty, yeah, right? Look at that. Isn't it pretty?
That's cool.
All right.
So
okay.
if anyone wants anything, if you're like, oh, could you try this? Just type it in the chat. Otherwise, I think we'll move on from this one, unless you tell us otherwise. Oh, red and black.
Red and black.
Can and then Montgomery says, make a rainbow or make it in like a certain order.
So yeah, because we're letting the computer choose where to start, that's why it's different every time I run it. So I'm letting the computer choose where to go and what sort of let's see, so what direction to take. But if you want it to, let's say red and black, you want it to be red and black, then in that case we can also choose that for the computer. So let's say I want the red, if I want to go from red to black or red to, you know, darker, then in that case let's have the red start at 9, and we're gonna have it move to be darker each time. So let's do I'm gonna do a -2, make it even more dark. So that'll be 9, 7, 5, 3, and 1. So that'll go from a reddish to a blackish, which means I'm gonna have 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue. And so I'm taking the randomness out of this to sort of make it what I want it to be. So there's gonna be no green or blue parts in this, but it's going to go from red to close to black. And so we have the red, and you got brighter. Yeah, so there's your red and black that you asked for. And then can we make a rainbow of things somehow, or make it in a certain order? So through this, we did just choose the red and black. So we did choose that order. And then to make a rainbow, let's see, we would have to use all three of the colors. Let's, if we want to go from, let's see, the rainbow goes from red to blue. So if we keep red the way it is, and then we have blue increase each time. So I'm going to do a +2. Actually, I don't need the plus. I can just have a +2 there. Then let's add some blue to it. So we get a little bit more of a spectrum now, where we have we have purples and pinks and blues and reds. Looks like we're going to need to add some green in order to have it actually show the full spectrum. Let's see. What if we max the red out? Let's see if I can add it as F there. And then green, what if I have green start in the middle? So we'll have it start at 8. Will that? Oh, it doesn't like that. We're gonna go back to 9. All right, and then we get a little bit more of a spectrum here, right? And so these are numbers where you can sort of play around with them to get them to show different things. All right, I am aware of time. So we could quickly go into another one, or I could just take questions now from you. It's up to you.
So it's all up to you guys. We have about 4 minutes left. You can have Lisa show one more thing, or you can ask questions that you have of her. So in the chat box, say what you want. So Simon's saying to move on, you mean to do another showcase something else?
Mm-hmm.
Do others agree with that? Or does anyone have any questions they want to ask of Lisa? Mommy says showcase something else. Right, sure. Those who speak, we do have Q&A. So Oliver, why don't you put your question in the Q&A and we'll make sure we get it answered. So if anyone has questions, put them in, but we'll do one more thing.
Okay, in that case, I'm going to give you another choice because I have a physics one and an English one prepared, and we'll only have time for one of them. So what do you prefer, physics or English? Gotta vote for English. Gotta vote for physics. English. Oh, here we go. We're battling it out.
Oh, it's tied. We need a tiebreaker.
We do need a tiebreaker.
Oh. Simon says Jack agrees with me. I don't know if I believe you, Simon. It looks like
physics is getting the push here. Okay. So for the physics one, I'm just gonna stay in Codesters. I'm not even gonna go to the slide. And this one's going to be this code, there's quite a bit here, so I will definitely not have time to go through it, but I'm gonna run the program and show you what it does. So you have this person here that you're playing, and they have a basketball, and your goal is to figure out what angle to throw it at to get it into the hoop. So this requires understanding of gravity and velocity. So you'll have to enter both an x velocity and a y velocity. So to show you the difference here, so if I do an x velocity of, let's say 10, and a y velocity of 0, just to show you the effect of the x velocity, the x1 is the one that pushes it towards horizontally towards the hoop. So this will make the ball go horizontally to the right. And so we didn't get it into the hoop that time. If I show you what the y velocity does, so I make the x a 0 and I make the y velocity 10, that's going to make the ball go straight up with gravity though. All right, so it went up and then it bounced back down. And so we need a combination of these X and Y velocities to try and get the ball into the hoop. So we'll need both X and Y parts. So let me put a starting point of 10 and 10, and then you'll help me figure out how to get it in the hoop. Oh, we didn't quite put it high enough. So what do you think we need to do? 20 and 20. Let's give it a try. Whoa, that one bounced right off the top of the board. A little too much power that time. All right, so somewhere between 10 and 10 and 20 and 20. What are we thinking? 15 and 15? That seems like a good center point, doesn't it? Both of you said that at the same time. All right, let's see. Ooh, that was close. Oh, that happens to me in basketball all the time. It always hits the bottom of the thing and then comes back. All right, we got, let's see, what was next? 10 and 20. Oh, that was almost. It hit that backboard and came back just slightly too much. We have 15 and 12. Oh, not quite high enough. We got 20 and 15. Oh, also a little bit too fast going horizontal there. We got a 15 and 20. Whoa, that time it bouncing all over. All right, what was?
Oh, we got lots of coming in now. I think
we do.
I think
You're all are determined.
14 and 15 is your next one.
Okay, 14, 15. Let's see. Oh, that went, I think, right through the bar there. We got to go into the top of the hoop.
So
that one was close.
15 and 13.
15 and 13. Oh, a little bit too low.
15 and 17.
15 and 17.
Oh,
oh, so close. So
17
close.
and 17.
17 and 17. We're narrowing in on it.
Oh, 10
well,
and 16.
10 and 16. There it went. Yay.
Good job, Miranda. That was awesome.
So there it goes. So that's the little physics exercise to understand how to shoot in a hoop.
That's awesome. Before we wrap up completely, because I know we're a little over time, I'm going to launch one final poll just so you guys can give us a little bit of feedback before. I know we have one question from Oliver, and I know Lisa has a few final parting words for you. So if you can just go into the poll that I just launched, answer the two questions, then we'll get to Oliver's question. And if any of you thought of any questions, you can put them in. Give it a second. I only see, I want more than 2 people answering the poll, please. I did put into the chat box to sign up. If you want to actually learn more code, get into it, sign up for our World Changers. I'll put that link in again. It'd be awesome. You guys can spend some time with us and actually do more code instead of watching Lisa do the code. You'll actually be doing it. You don't see the poll. If you don't see the poll, oh, you don't see the poll either. So it's just a couple of you. That's okay. For a time, we'll just move on. All right. So I know Oliver asked a question that I thought was really a good question, because you talked about how using computer science to bring it into all these different subjects in school. And so his question was, how do you see this art stuff being incorporated into art class?
Yeah, Yeah, and that is a very good question, right? Because not every classroom is going to have computers, and not every student is going to be able to, I'm not expecting you to sit at a computer in every single class in school, although that's probably what you're doing if you're remote right now, isn't it? Um, but what I imagine is the textbook has not only some of these online activities where you're actually writing the code, but it also has offline activities. So for example, the Edna Andrade one with the zigzags. Let me go back to that one for a second. This one that we wrote. Um, we also have an offline activity for this where you actually cut a zigzag out of construction paper, and then you have to copy that zigzag pattern like 12 times or however you want, and then you can arrange the zigzags on a piece of paper to sort of mimic this pattern where you have them all spread out in a circle. And so that still uses computational thinking to sort of break down the pattern into these small steps of, okay, I'm going to make a zigzag, I'm going to copy it a bunch of times, and then I'm going to arrange it in a circle pattern. And so it still uses computational thinking, even though you're not sitting at a computer doing that. And so for each chapter in the textbook, and what I envision is that it would be sort of a mixture, where if you have access to a computer or you have lab days or something, then you would be able to do some of these programming projects. But you also have these offline or unplugged activities where you'd still be able to apply the concepts even though you're not actually coding them on a computer. But yeah, thank you for that question. That was great.
Yeah. All right, so there are no more questions in the Q&A. So I don't know if Lisa, you had mentioned there was some contest that you wanted to
Yes,
let
so
folks
for
know
the
about.
high schoolers, there is what's called an NC Award for aspirations in computing. So if you are at all interested in computing, you don't need to have a lot of experience to apply for this. You just need to have an interest in it and in pursuing it. And this is an award specifically for 9th to 12th graders. So we're looking for that high school audience. And so you can win at the state level or at the national level. And so this is open, I think, for the next month or so. And so I am involved in.
It actually looks like the deadline's next week.
Is it?
Well, it says apply by the early
Oh, the early
deadline.
deadline.
And I don't know if then there's another deadline, but
I believe, yeah, I think it's in November, the deadline for it. That is the early deadline, is for next week.
Yeah.
In case you want to be invited to, looks like an exclusive. I'm guessing this is a virtual event that's happening.
Yeah.
For all the people who apply. But that is sort of a nice little perk in case you are interested in computer stuff. So yeah,
Great.
thank you for letting me plug that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Let's all thank Lisa for showcasing what she's been doing. I think this book is going to be really exciting for classroom teachers to bring computer science into schools. You guys got an early look at it. I'll put in one final plug for you guys to join us in the program that starts next Thursday night to actually learn to do coding. And hopefully I'll see you all next Wednesday. Our science cafe next week is on space. We have someone who interned with NASA and we'll be talking about space stuff. So hopefully we'll see you all, and thank you all for joining us again today. It's always so much fun. So everyone have a good evening.
Great.